Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I thought I would do a sit down, get talking to you guys, because I have a lot of questions that I get asked, and I'm like, you know what? I want to help as many people as possible because, like, we want to, like, realistically, when you start off in the gym, holy shit, there is so much information. There's so much people telling you should do this, you should do that, and it's a scary thing. Like, I'll be 100% honest. You go into the gym and you're like, what am I supposed to do? There's so many people training different styles. There's different ways of, people saying, oh, you need to do this amount of reps. You need to do this amount of sets. Oh, you can only train this body part this amount of times, this and this and this. I feel like people try to overcomplicate the actual, to put on size. And like that's the big thing about it. So I started working out when I was 13. I was almost 14 at that time. So I was quite young. And that was back, when the fitness industry wasn't that big. You had a few like, YouTubers and that was it when it came down to it. And like I was, I made every possible dumb mistake that I could possibly make. Like even in my first year of lifting, I tore my rotator cuff, thinking, hey, I didn't believe in warming up. I thought warming up was stupid. I thought, I'm just gonna go straight into my sets. My form was garbage. I just like, we all start somewhere. That's the biggest thing is to start. And like everyone's like, oh, I have to do it right off the bat. I gotta do like 110%. No, work into this. Like this is gonna be, if you want to actually see good results in the gym, you have to come into it being like, hey, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And everyone's like, hey, I need to do this. I need to do, I want to like look like, Captain America in 6 months. I'm like, realistically, it's not. You have to enjoy it. And like, that's the biggest advice I can give someone who is starting off in the gym. Just fall in love with the process. Like, that's the big thing about it. You don't need to be like, hey, I need to be like, I need to do this and this and this. And I'm like, stop. Just take a breath. Just enjoy it. Enjoy it. Make those small little goals, those small little accomplishments. Like, hey, today I did like, 10 more pounds on the lat pull down. Like, that's the big thing about it. And like everyone's like, oh, I need to do it's a lot of pressure. And like of course you see the cream of the crop on social media and you're comparing yourself to people that are just either, genetic freaks or people that are like have been training for a long time, and you create this like scenario in your head like, hey, I'm not where I want to be. But everyone's journey is going to be different. And that's the big thing about it. My journey is going to be different than your journey. So I've been training for it's been 10 and a half years now. So I've been training for over a decade. And it's like every year I'm still learning new things. And like that's the big thing about it. My big thing is continue to learn. And also, don't take people's advice for just what it is. Let's just say, someone tells you, oh, incline, dumbbell press is the best upper chest movement, right? Let's just say someone tells you that, right? But you do it, you don't get the greatest activation from it. Keep the movements that you actually enjoy, the movements that you can actually feel, versus like, take bits and pieces and like, it's trial and error. Realistically, it's almost like a science experiment at the end of the day. You're just trying to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And that's the big thing about it. Like everyone's like, hey, I need to like, let's just say I'm gonna follow the Rock's workout plan, and I'm gonna like follow it to the T. That's the best routine for him. And like that's the big thing about it. Like don't wrong. And like there's so much information, about like, hey, how many reps I should do, how many sets I should do. And like that's the big thing about it. And then, of course, if you're trying to do more strength wise, yes, you're gonna have to do lower reps. But realistically, you can build muscle from anywhere from like 5 to 30 rep range. So it's like you don't have to get so realistically, you just have to be achieving failure. Of course, lower reps mean you're gonna actually be able to build more strength. Yes, you're conditioning yourself to more strength. That definitely makes sense. But if you're, hey, I'm like, anything after 10 reps, that's just like, that's just fatigue. Realistically, you can build muscle in any way humanly possible. Realistically, you could build muscle if you really wanted to at 50 reps. I wouldn't recommend it, but like, don't shy away from like high volume either. And like, that's the big thing about it. And like some muscles actually respond better to high volume versus some that respond better to more low volume like that. So my big thing, that these are 5 things that I wish I would have personally done differently, because trust me, I made too many mistakes. Okay, number one, the biggest thing that I wish I would have been done differently is actually take rest days. My big thing was when I first started working out, I was like, hey, I am gonna lose all my progress. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. I'm like, I'm not gonna grow. I'm gonna lose all my progress if I take a day off. Look at it as a rest day, as a growth day. For me, that was the biggest thing for me, was the mental aspect of, hey, I need to take a day off. And that for me was, let's be honest, our muscles don't grow during the gym. They grow when we recover and when we're sleeping and we're resting. Our muscles, we're just breaking them down in the gym. That's the big thing about it. So it's like, that's the thing, is like, if you keep beating up your body and keep beating it up, you're not going to see progress and like that. Like, you're not going to give yourself enough time to actually recover and to grow the muscle. And that's the big thing about it. And like, people are like, hey, I'm not making progress. And I'm like, well, are you actually even giving yourself time to actually recover from this? And that's the big thing about it. And like, so a lot of people are, they think they're recovering and they're like, hey, I'm only like sleeping, 4 hours a night. I'm like, hey, maybe you need to actually start, be like, hey, I need to actually sleep more. I have to be, on top of those kind of things about it. So I definitely recommend take at least one day off. It can be like 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, or 6 days in a row. But listen to your body. If you are sore and you cannot train, do not keep pushing it. That was the stupidest thing I believed. I was sometimes, for my first 3 years, unless I was throwing up, I would consistently train no matter what, no matter how sore my body was, and I would just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it was the worst thing I could have possibly done for myself. Don't get me wrong, I made progress, but I probably could have made a lot more progress if I had been like, hey, I need to relax and recover and give myself a break and like that. And like, that's the big thing about it. And like, that's my number one thing I wish I would have personally done, because it took me about 3 years of consistent training for me to be like, hey, I need to actually take care of my body and I actually need to take rest days, and also like, rest days are just good for you, not just physically, but for mentally. That's how you prevent burnout. That's how you prevent, some people like, oh, I keep training and training and like that. And like, they burn out from training. And like, that's the big thing about it. Number two thing I wish I would have told myself, I was so scared of carbs when I was like, this was back in the day when, there wasn't as many videos. There was only a few YouTubers that really went on about nutrition and stuff like that. And when I was young, I was like, protein is everything. So I would be drinking, 8, 10, you freaking protein shakes a day. Realistically, at that time, I was like 130 pounds, at most. I got up to 132 pounds in my first year. I was 89 pounds and I went to 132. And then because I went from like, a really bad eating disorder to eating healthy and like getting back up to a normal body weight, at least a healthy body weight, right? And that's the big thing about it. So when it came down to it, I believe protein was everything. And like carbs aren't gonna go. Carbs are literally what fuel our body. If you want to be able to push weight, what do you think makes up your muscle? It's water and glycogen. That's literally what is stored in your muscles. That's what literally moves our muscles from point A to point B. Even if I move my arm like that took ATP. That's what glycogen does. That's what glycogen's turned into. So if we don't have enough glycogen, how do you ever expect to have a good workout? And that's the big thing about it. I'm like, you can't. And like, that's the thing about it. Like, everyone's like, oh, you're like, I was so scared, like carbs will make you fat. Well, that's not the truth. Let's be 100% honest. Yes, if you're only eating carbs and you're not actually working out and stuff like that, yeah, it can make you fat. But like, let's be honest, it's the sugars, not the complex carbs. Like complex carbs, I'm talking like rice, potatoes, pasta, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, bread and stuff like that, versus the, sugary ones, which are non-complex. Those go through our system a lot quicker. And that's the big thing about it. So if we're not, we're eating like freaking, like let's just say we're having chocolate chip cookies and we're expecting that to be like, cutting. But like, we need that to function. We need that to actually grow. Once I actually started adding carbs, I started building muscle a lot faster. I started getting stronger in the gym. I started actually making progress. So that's the big thing about it. Do not overconsume your protein. Because realistically, at a certain point, we're just gonna be shitting it out. As simple as that. It's gonna go to waste. All that protein powder we could have just saved, realistically. So if you are bulking, I say about 0.8 times your body weight. So let's just say you weigh 200 pounds. Let's just say 0.8. Let's just say you eat at least 180 grams of protein. That's as simple as that. Let's just say you're cutting, right? Cutting, on the other hand, if you're cutting over there, yeah, you can eat about a gram per body weight, or maybe 1.2 if you're in a heavy cut. Because like realistically, when we work out, our energy sources, we go from carbs, fats, and then proteins. But if we're already getting not that many carbs and not that many fats, our protein now also has to become an energy source. That's why it's actually important on a cut to actually increase our protein. So that's the big thing about it. So that's number one. Do not overconsume protein. Do not think you're gonna get bigger by drinking 8-10 protein shakes. You're like, protein, yes, builds muscle, but drinking an absurd amount or eating an absurd amount of protein, let's just say you weigh 200 pounds and you're eating 400 grams of protein a day. Let's be honest, you do not need that 400 grams of protein. Realistically, it's I'm not saying you can't overshoot, but don't be trying to actively be like, I need to eat 400 grams a day of protein. That would be actually better if you ate that of carbs and other things in your diet, because that's the thing, is like we need that to grow. It is simple as that. And like the third thing I could tell myself of like advice of like, hey, of what I wish I would have done would be, do not, I really struggled with this, if I'm being 100% honest. Do not compare yourself to others. Our journeys are going to be entirely different and like that. And you're going to be comparing yourself to your buddies and be like, hey, my buddy benched 225. Why am I only stuck at 185? Like, do not, comparison is a thief of joy. And that's the big thing about it. So just enjoy your own journey. It's a marathon, guys. It's a marathon. And like, that's the big thing. Also play to your strengths. Some people just have stronger muscles that grow faster. Some people are better at certain movements just based off their biomechanics of their body and stuff like that. So don't be like, hey, my friend benches, 225, but I can barely bench 185. And that's the big thing about it. Do not beat yourself up over that. And like a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, hey, I'm not as good as my friend. No. Your journey is just going to be different. You may actually be better at certain lifts than he is. And some people are just also more prone to putting on size. Some people are more prone, and that's the thing is about it, is that your genetics, I believe, when someone, shows me like, hey, I want to look like this, blah, 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 right? And they show me and they base it off of like a person. I'm like, naturally, you will never, even unnaturally, look at the size of your clavicle, look at the size of his clavicle. His clavicle is a lot wider than yours. No matter what, you can't change that about your body. And that's the big thing about it. And like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to look exactly like that. I'm like, you can have an amazing physique, but your physique is going to be your physique. That's the big thing about it. And like everyone's like, oh, I'm not looking like, I want to look like this. I'm like, guys, you can have a great physique, but it may not 110% look like that. And like, let's just say someone who has a wider clavicle, they may be more shoulder, chest dominant and back dominant. Well, you may actually be more arm dominant because you've got, your clavicle is not as much, so your arms take over. And like, that's the big thing about it. Like for me, like, I don't have the greatest bicep peaks. I have very long biceps. They look really good from the side, but when I flex the peaks, they're not that great. Don't get me wrong, they're big. And like, that's the thing. My arm's only big because I have really big triceps. And like, that's the thing. I'm not saying my biceps aren't big. I just don't have the natural, that insane peak and like that. So it's like, play down to what works, and also like, for me, my back grows faster than anything, to the point that sometimes I actually have to take breaks of training it so my other muscles catch up. And like, that's the big thing about it. So it's like, a lot of people are like, hey, just learn, it's building that relationship with your body and being like, hey, learn your strengths, learn how, your body actually works and how your body responds to certain things. Like, don't just be like, hey, I need to, like, my buddy does, let's just say, French press for his triceps and his triceps are huge. Don't get me wrong. It's a great exercise. But if your body does not like it, try out different exercises. There's so many exercises out there that a lot of people feel like they have to do a certain one. There are so many exercises out there, and like, do what actually feels good, because if it feels good, you're gonna do it more often. You're actually gonna normally, it may even be biomechanically better for your body. So you're actually gonna get more gains from it. So it's like, that's the big thing about it. So it's like, oh, everyone's like, okay, right now on TikTok, what's trending is that reverse grip upper, that incline press. And for me, I feel it only in my triceps. No matter what I do, it feels really bad on my wrists, and it feels completely in my triceps and stuff like that. So it's like, I believe it's a good movement. I kind of don't like. I believe it's good movement, and like I get the isolation of it and like that. But for me, I just don't get it. So it's like, why am I gonna do something that isn't gonna work for me? Or it's even like, okay, exercises that I personally was like, hey, I originally hated. I used to hate overhead tricep extensions. They are my favorite exercise now. In the last 3 years, they are my favorite exercise. But back in the day, I'm like, oh, I only feel this in my elbows. So it's like, don't be like afraid to go back to it and try it out and like that. But like, be like, hey, do what works for you. And like, I went through exercises where they were my favorite exercises for years, and now they're still like exercises I do. But like, when it comes down to it, I may have new favorite exercises. So yeah, and then another tip that I would give. So I think this would be number 4 now. Number 4 would be, don't try and like focus on the weights that you're lifting, like the numbers. Everyone's so focused on, hey, I need, I'm lifting this weight. I need to be benching 225, and they try and like move the weight as fast as possible, break down on form. I don't believe that. Like, try and actually, lift weights. Try and get the most out of the least amount of weight. I'm not saying do not progressively overload. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But if you're, sacrificing your form to like, actually get it, try and get the most out of it. Especially if you're trying to bodybuild, try and activate, try and make it slow and controlled. Try and get the most out of it. Because it's like, if you're just jerking the weight around, what do you guys expect? You're not going to make the progress, everything like that. You can get so much more out of one set than a whole bunch of sets if you're just bouncing it around like that. So it's like, might as well go slow and controlled, get the most, milk the movements. Don't be like, hey, like even when I used to bench. So like, here's for me, I used to bounce the bar off my chest. And I thought, that would be like, and I'm like, if I slowed it down, it would actually be, I would not be able to make it like, I wouldn't actually be able to lift as much. Actually, realistically, I would go slow now, and then I will explode off. So it's like, that's the big thing about it. Realistically, milk your eccentrics. Try and get the most out of them. Don't be like, hey, I can't do this. I can't, like, I just need to get the weight up. Do not think about the numbers. And I feel like so many people get so fixated on a number when they're lifting. Well, it's actually just how the muscle feels. Your body doesn't know the difference from any type of resistance. It's just how much force it took to actually lift the weight. And that's the big thing about it. And it's like, I can have a good workout with lighter weights, and I can have a good workout with heavy weights. I believe both are good. But also don't be like, hey, I have to be lifting heavy only to make progress. No. Progressive overload, that's time under tension. That's freaking how many reps you've done. That's how many sets you've done. That doesn't always have to be the weight has to be increased. And a lot of people are like, that's the only way to grow. And I'm like, don't wrong. It's a great indicator. It's a great way to grow. But do not be, single-minded on that one idea that that's the only way you can make progress. Like, if I'm actually doing an exercise with the same weight, the same amount of freaking, reps, but if I'm doing them insanely slow and controlled, I'm going to make a lot more progress. That is still progressive overload, because it's actually taking me longer to do the movement. My muscles are under more tension. So it's like, I'm going to make more progress. So like, that's something I would have told myself, because when I was younger, I was like, I wanted to like, move the weights as fast as possible. I used to jerk the weights, I would break down my form, just trying to like get the weight from point A to point B. We're not power lifters. We're not trying to get the weight from point A to point B. And that's the big thing about it. Like, everyone's like, I need to. No, don't try and be that person. It's not going to achieve anything. it's realistically the chance of getting hurt is going to go up. The chances of like, that you actually are going to actually engage the muscle. Don't worry, you're going to still make some gains, but you're going to make a lot more gains if you actually control the weight. And that's the big thing about it. And then my last tip advice that I could give my younger self, and like my big thing about it is don't be afraid to ask for help in the gym. Don't be afraid to, I was always so like, I was like scared to like, people would judge me, or, people would think of me less if I asked for help. But like, if you see, like, I used to go, like, when I was about like 14 to 16, I would go up to the biggest guys in the gym, and like, this was back before like social media was a huge thing. Like, during social media was starting to take off, but there wasn't that much advice. So let's just say I had someone who had like really impressive shoulders. I would ask them what they did for shoulders, and I would try it out. Half the things I learned was from asking, and like, don't be afraid to go to the gym. A lot of people are like scared that like, people are going to judge you. Don't know, there's dicks in anywhere you go in life. But a lot of times we all started somewhere in the gym. Don't be afraid to start your journey. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But realistically, it never becomes tomorrow. And that's the big thing about it. You just need to start. Because realistically, it takes about 90 days to start like create a habit. And like, to me, it's second nature. Like I'm like, I have to go train. And it's like, this is what makes me, enjoy life. But also, if you guys are like trying to like get into the gym for, like, if you think this is gonna like, do this for you. Don't do this for, to get girls. Don't do this for, clout or Instagram, or like, do this because it's something you enjoy, because that's going to keep you in the long run, realistically, versus, if you're just trying to do this for other people's validation, it's not something that you need to be doing. It's not something that's going to achieve you happiness. Find something that you actually truly love. And for me, I love lifting weights, and that's, for me, is what makes me happy. But like, if you don't need to like, lift weights if you don't enjoy them. You can live an active, healthy lifestyle. Yes, lifting weights is the best way to build muscle, but realistically, and like, don't get me wrong, we're held to these standards of, that we have to look like this and look, the body, even if you compare, like, let's just say, 20 years ago, the male body standards have just gone up so much more. And it's just like, a lot of people are like, hey, I'm not good enough. I'm not. Be yourself. Be proud of who you are. If we all look the same, realistically, life would be boring. And that's the big thing about it. Try, of course, be healthy. Take care of yourself. Do the things that you need to do for yourself. But know that the person staring back in the mirror is worth love and is worth care. And be gentle with that person. For me, I used to think, after 30 pounds, 40 pounds, I'll be happy, 50 pounds. And I realized it was just going to become a continuous cycle. Like, that's the big thing about it. It's like, for me, I had to be like, hey, I'm happy with the progress I made. I'm like that. But it's also something for me that, like, I am proud of who I am. It's good to strive for more, but you also have to be happy with who you are right now in this moment. And like, that's the big thing about it. Like, looks fade, looks do. Muscles get smaller over time. You're not going to always be as jacked as you ever were, and like, that's the big thing about it. Like, a lot of people ask me like, hey, Ethan, what, they always come up to me, and the biggest thing is like, they're like, hey, don't you feel like superior? No. Or does that make you better? No. Just because you work out, that doesn't make you a better person. Don't shit on others. Do not go out of your way to be, mean or anything like that. And that's the big thing. That's why I don't like some people in the gym community that go out of their way to shit on others, bring others down. And that's not what we're here for. And like, that's the big thing about it. But I thought this would be my first introduction of a talking video. If you guys want to give any advice or anything like that, and if you guys stayed along through the whole video, I do appreciate it. It definitely does mean a lot to me. But hopefully you guys did enjoy like that. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support on all my platforms. It definitely did mean the world to me. It really did. So I just want to say truly thank you. Like, I can't say thank you enough. I never thought I would even have a following. So I just want to truly, from the bottom of my heart, say thank you. If you guys don't mind, it would mean a lot if you guys left a comment, like the video and subscribe. That would mean the whole entire world to me. So hopefully you guys, if you have any questions or any types of videos you guys are wanting me to do or want me to talk about and expand on, I will start be making videos very daily and like that. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. You guys take care.